You've got ideas, you've got ambition, you've got no time, or so you think. I'm Marissa Lonick, and I help busy moms with big dreams and no time. Join me each week as I dive into time management strategies, goal setting and achieving framework, and inspiring guests who are juggling mom life, work life, fill in the blank life. Dreams don't work unless you do, and just because you're a mom doesn't mean you can't still make it happen, whatever it means to you. Welcome to the Mama Work It podcast. Hey, mama friends. Welcome back to the Mama Work It podcast. I hope you're having a fantastic day, week, month, season, year, all the things. Okay. I am super excited today to introduce you to my guest, Tess O'Driscoll. To be honest, I've been kind of fangirling on Tess for a while now on IG, and selfishly, I cannot wait to have this conversation for our listeners, but also for me. Tess is known as the Enneagram Mom. She helps mothers connect with themselves, their spouses, and their children utilizing the Enneagram. Now, if you don't know what the Enneagram is, in just a few words, it's a personality assessment you can take that gives you further insight into who you are. So this can help you become more self-aware, which in turn helps you connect and interact with those around you. And I'm going to stop there because Tess is here and she's the expert. So I'm going to let her give you all the juicy deets on the Enneagram so you can geek out on this with us and hopefully learn some awesome new things about yourself today on our episode. So Tess, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This is my favorite thing to talk about in the whole wide world. So I'm like, yes, more people to know about the Enneagram.
Yeah. Okay. Well, first things first, tell us more about you, your story, like what got you started in the Enneagram world?
Yeah, so I had a business in 2020 and it was doing really well. And then, the world a little bit fell apart. You guys were there, you understand. And it kind of fell apart. And in that time, I felt a little bit lost, which as an Enneagram 3, feeling lost is like one of the worst feelings in the world. I'm like, if I'm not dedicated to working and being successful, who am I in life basically? So I decided to grab all the Enneagram books that had been sitting in, when you just keep moving things into your cart in Amazon that you're like, I'll get that later. I'll get that. I finally moved them up and purchased them. And I couldn't stop talking about them. I literally would go everywhere. I would meet people and it became such a huge part of conversations I was having, just trying to understand myself and understanding the world around me, trying to process things. And I began to realize this was what I was made for. I was made for the Enneagram, the way that I am able to hold on to information in my head. And so I was like, you know what, I'm just going to start the Enneagram Mom, because at that point in time, there were a lot of Enneagram Instagrams, but there were none that was focused on motherhood and specifically to reach out to your spouse, to reach out to your children. And so I was like, you know what, I'm just going to start my own Instagram and make it happen. And I've been so grateful because I've met so many amazing people on this journey, other Enneagram coaches. I honestly feel truly blessed that, again, this is my job. I get to do this and to help people to, I guess, feel more in touch with themselves, to feel like they have a connection with their purpose. Because I think a lot of the times we feel like we might just, especially as moms, oh, we're just living life day by day, maybe even hour by hour. This morning was pretty rough, okay? But it's just we're trying to live our lives. But if we understand why we were put here and how to live to our fullest potential, I feel like that's when we really can achieve our highest results.
I couldn't agree more. I think when you're not aligned, life feels really hard. Right? And how do you get aligned? Yes. I think a first step there is to know who you are, to know more about yourself and how you function and what lights you up and all the things that make you feel good and all the things that don't make you feel good, and not push through and plow through those things 24/7 because you feel like you have to or you should be. Right. So just really working more in the flow. And I know that's what you preach and what you practice and what you're helping moms to achieve. So I love this. I can't wait to dive in further.
Yes.
So, for the mamas listening who maybe have not heard of the Enneagram before, can you give us a basic overview? Maybe this is the first time they're hearing this word, this strange word, Enneagram, or they've heard it before, but they just don't really know what those numbers mean. Can you just give us like a lesson?
Yes, I would love to. And I definitely, on my podcast, the Enneagram Mom podcast, I have a more in detail. So if like, you're like, oh, I think I might be this one or this one, you can go listen to my podcast, to give you a little bit more depth. Cause like I offer it as a free resource because I'm going to plug this in first. I actually don't recommend any tests at all. Because what often
Interesting.
happens
Okay.
is people come back to me in my inbox on Instagram and they're like, I took the test and I scored these ones the highest and I don't know who I am. And I was like, the reason the Enneagram is so accurate is because it's a journey. It's a true evaluation of yourself and to begin to really understand yourself and to look for your motivation. So that's why I was like, I don't recommend tests anymore, because then people come in and they're like, well, I can't be that number because I scored high on this one. And I'm like, you are the one that gets to determine your number, like more than anyone else, because you know your motivation more than anyone else. So just a little input there so that you know like where I'm coming from. A lot of Enneagram coaches totally agree with me. So I'm like, this is something that like it's your own personal journey. So if by the end you're like, I still don't know who I am, or even in 6 months you're still trying to figure it out, that's okay. It's a process. And once you figure it out, you're like, oh, now I understand that addiction of the Enneagram that people talk about.
That is so interesting. I've never heard that approach to not take the quiz. Like I've always been someone who's like, oh yeah, I got to take the quiz, the disc, the Enneagram, whatever it is, and that's going to
Mm-hmm.
feed me the results. But this makes sense. This makes sense that you would
Yep.
study it a little bit further, learn about every number perhaps, and then really determine
Mm-hmm.
where you fit. Would you also say, as just a follow-up question, and I know we're going to dive into this and maybe you're going to answer it in a minute, but would you also say that your Enneagram could change?
So for me personally, I believe your Enneagram number could change up until your late teens to early 20s. Past that, your brain is fully developed. So if you are trying to figure out your children's types, just it's with a grain of salt, because like my 5-year-old can't be like, yes, mom, my deepest motivation is to be competent in life. And I'm like, okay, like, but taking it with a grain of salt, but it has helped me approach them differently and recognize some kind of trauma can happen to your children or to your teenagers. And again, trauma looks differently. Trauma could be your friend group leaves, or trauma could be a new baby's born and so you don't get as much attention. So some type of trauma can affect your number. And then past that point in time, your brain, as it's developing, processes what's the most important thing that's motivating me. So once you hit late teens, adulthood, your number will stay consistently the same. And this doesn't mean that you weren't born that number. I have my Enneagram 7 son. He came out of 7 the moment he like showed up on this earth, like 6 months old. Like he is just so like, if it's not fun, what's the point in being alive? And that's okay. I'm like, I can recognize that. I can work with this. But I also am like, okay, there's still a possibility that he can shift. So as you're in adulthood, a lot of people are like, well, I feel like my number might not be this, or I might have, and truly what you're looking at too is the healthy versus the unhealthy versus the average levels. Because in every Enneagram number, there is average, which most of us sit on, and then there's unhealthy, and then there's healthy above it. And when you're looking at your life, you're trying to grow to the healthier levels. So you might look back and be like, oh, I really acted more like this number, or I was going through this. You might have moved to your stress number. You might have moved to your growth number. And you have every part of the Enneagram in you. There's just one motivation that you connect with the most. And that's what confuses people.
Okay. Got it. All right. So I'm listening to this podcast. I'm hearing this word Enneagram a bunch of times. What is it? What does it mean for me? Why should I do it? Why should I learn about it?
Yes. Okay. So your Enneagram is how your personality basically manifests, right? It shows what your deepest desire is and your motivation in life. Also, your deepest fear, which is why a test can't tell you, like, my deepest fear is of failure. You, as an Enneagram 3, completely understand that fear. Whereas for my husband, he's like, I don't get it. Like, so that's what it's telling you. And so you're going to behave and do things in order to protect that motivation the most, because that's who you are. So, and this is, I can dive into a little bit into each of the numbers. So the 1 is known as the perfectionist. Their desire is to be good. Their biggest fear is to be bad. They have a really strong moral compass. They like for things to be a certain way, and they believe that they are a good person if they kind of follow things in a certain direction. 2s are known as the helper. These are the givers of the community. They naturally see what other people need because their desire is to be loved. So when you are loved and more lovable, you are putting out energy to other people. So often they are not in tune with their own feelings because, well, I know how Beth and Joan feel, but I don't know how I actually feel over here. And so their desire is that love piece. And that means their biggest fear is to not be loved or a lovable person. And then we've got Enneagram 3s. It's you and me. Our biggest desire is to be successful. So we can mold ourselves to be what successful looks like, which means that we might have had a harder time as we were in our youth figuring out who we were, because we can naturally be whatever anybody needs us to be. We're with a bunch of introverts, all of a sudden we're really quiet and easygoing. We're with a bunch of extroverts, all of a sudden we're the life of the party. Like, we can be what we need to be to fit success into that room. And our biggest fear is of failure. So we have to do the things that make us look successful or to be successful. And again, successful is going to look different to you than it looks to me as well. And so we're both fighting for that. Okay, what does successful feel like? Then we've got the Enneagram 4s. Now, they are very unique, very different in this world. And it's because they truly desire to make sure that they've made an impact. They want to make sure they made an impact, they made a difference, that they are unique, that they are special, and that they are able to give in a way that like shows that they're different in this world. And their biggest fear is of loss of themselves or not being able to give out something different. And then we've got the Enneagram 5s. The Enneagram 5s, their biggest desire is competency. How can I show that I know and have obtained this knowledge? And they have a fear of not having enough knowledge. So they might have a hard time moving forward because they're like, I need to research this. They are the Googlers of this world. They're like, hold on, let me Google that. I'll get back to you. They know the most random facts. They're the funnest people to talk to because they know all of the depth of it. They're also the best like neutral situation because the 4s are very in touch with their feelings. The 5s are in touch with their feelings, but they take their own time to process them. They badly need alone time to process all the pieces. We've got 6s. They are the loyalists in the world. That means they become extremely loyal. This could be religion. This could be a brand that they love. This could be people in their life because they often don't trust themselves very much. Okay, their biggest fear is not being safe. So their biggest desire is to be safe. And so they might trust authority people, or they can be an opposite 6 who doesn't trust anyone, and they kind of go against the grain of anything because they are trying to seek that authoritarian figure or seek that safety from something. But they are loyal to a T. They might have a bit of like anxious thoughts because they are able to think through ahead of things. Of okay, what if, what could possibly happen? So they are able like to plan, think ahead, and have like all the pieces put together. Then we've got the Enneagram 7s. Now these are the fun people. Like, they just live their lives in such a beautiful way. They created the word FOMO just for an Enneagram 7. I'm 100% sure of it. And so when you look at the Enneagram 7s, what you're looking at is that their biggest fear is pain. So what they are looking for is fulfillment and satisfaction. The problem is we often aren't satisfied. And so they are constantly seeking more and more and more and more. And so they are the type of people that pull everyone's stories. They see the silver lining in everything. And they're like, oh, it's okay. I just got in a car crash and somebody stole my bank account. And you know what? But it's not raining today. And you're like, Okay. Okay. All right. They will find some things to find a good thing out of something because they want to avoid those pains and maybe avoid some of those emotions like long term, because that's very heavy for them. Then we've got the Enneagram 8s. They're known as the challenger. Again, this name can be very, very deceiving. 8s desire freedom and independence. They want to be able to be themselves, and they also expect that of other people. They expect people to be authentic and honest, and to a point. They're like, we don't want to have to go into strict details. They don't want to be micromanaged. They just want to be who they are. And especially women as 8s always kind of felt like they were told they were too bossy, or they knew too much and they needed to just like calm down, be more feminine, be more girly. Whereas an 8, they are bold and they are direct and they say it how it is, and they expect that from other people. So they are the people that would have your back, no problem. Everyone should have an Enneagram 8 behind their back because they would fight you to the death. They just love their people once you've like made it into their group. And then we've got the 9s. 9s are peacemakers. They desire above all else inner peace. Everything is gonna be fine. Everything's gonna be easy going. Let's just keep it peaceful. So they're protecting that inner peace, which is also at their own cost of their identity. So often they might be like, I don't want to put in a word or make a choice because I would hate to offend or hurt somebody else. So I'm just going to kind of hold back things to myself. They are the people that are the best mediators, the best of friends. They make everyone feel welcome because they can truly see both sides of a situation. And so they are always at worry that their inner peace is going to be taken from them. So what you're looking at is you've got all these Enneagram numbers. I just gave you 9 of them. You're like, what just happened? And what you're going to do is you're going to pull a few of them that you're like, okay, well, I know I'm not a 5. I know I'm not this one. I know whatever it is. And you'll be like, okay, I'm either this one, or this one. And that's what you're going to dive into. So that's where you can go to my podcast to listen to more in depth about it. There's also the book, The Road Back to You. That's fantastic. And that's where you're going to deep dive to figure out your type. Recognizing your type is not always your type. Okay. It's not always, you are not just a 3. Okay. Me and you, we're not just 3s. We also have wings. Wings are directly the numbers to the side of you. So these are like if you had your ice cream cone, we are a 3 ice cream cone, probably chocolate. And then we've got sprinkles to the side. And so I have a little bit of 4 sprinkles. I have a little bit of 4 personality, but like I took a handful of my 2 personality, right? So I have some of the Enneagram 2 traits. So it is very important for me to make sure that I'm caring, I'm loving. The other day, a mama skunk got hit and there was like 3 baby skunks on the side of the road. And I was like, I'm going to go save these skunks. And my husband's like, you're not going to go save those baby skunks. And I still feel guilty. I hope they're okay. And my husband's like, no, you're not going to do this. Anyways, but like, that's it, is you have the wings. So you have those personalities coming from the side as well. And then when you go to growth and stress, you actually go to different numbers for a short period of time, which is good because it can help you recognize, okay, I'm in a different place. Especially as moms, we should all know our stress numbers, because I know for you and me, when all of a sudden we're like, I don't want to do anything. I'm just going to stay in bed and binge watch my shows. I'm like, okay, I'm in stress. Do I need to stay here? Because it's important to recognize if stress is going to help you, if it's a healing time and you need to sit in it, or do I need to recognize I'm in stress, so I've got to do things that help me pull out of that, whether that's following my habit stacking. Hi, I'm an Enneagram 3. What do I need to do to help me pull out of it? And that is how the Enneagram doesn't just tell you like, oh, this is the type of fall decor I might pick out, or like, this is my favorite ice cream flavor. Instead, it's going into, okay, there's like depth in this that can help me utilize this with my entire family.
Wow. Okay. Thank you for that. That was amazing. I have a lot of information swirling around my brain. I'm going to re-listen to my own episode multiple times to really take that in. But I want to ask a little bit more about the stress component, because this is something actually I haven't heard before. So when you find yourself in those moments where you feel really disconnected from your primary number, is what I heard, you're in this stress mode. And I agree, right? You have to recognize whether you need to sit in that feeling and feel it, or you need to find what is going to motivate you to get out of it, right? And
yes.
Would you say that are there specific things for each primary number that you should have as like a toolkit or know about that are going to help you go from stress back to where you're aligned?
Yes. Okay. So I actually just posted a series on my Instagram. I think it was the one right before I'm doing now, that talks about how to move to growth more. And one of those, I was talking to another Enneagram coach, and we called it like tasting your poison. Like, those, back in the Princess Bride, where he's like, I had a little bit of this every day. So now I have no, like, I'm fine now. So what you need to do is make sure daily you are utilizing your stress number. So this means that your stress number, when it happens, you're not like totally smacked over the head by it, right? Like you can go, oh, I recognize this because I already am using healthy habits from that number. So that's what you're going to utilize, and that's what you're going to begin to notice. So what you're going to do is, when I will hurry and do like an overview of what your number goes to in stress and like some of those behaviors that might come out too, because I think that's going to really help you as well. So once, when they go to stress, they actually go to an Enneagram 4. And this means they usually pick up the unhealthy traits from that number. So all of a sudden they become really irrational, really moody. They start lashing out at people. This is when they really need alone time. And if you know a 1, they usually have bottled everything up inside, and it's like they have a shaken bottle. So they all of a sudden just like let it go on everybody. And you're like, you usually have it together, but all of a sudden they just can't anymore. So they go to that 4 behavior, and that's where you can recognize like, oh yeah, you gotta go spend time, go be alone. Even a 1 will be like, I need to be alone because no one's safe next to me. A 2, when they go to stress, they actually go to an 8. You'll notice these are opposite behaviors than they typically are. So a 2 that's normally a giver and so peaceful and kind and calm, all of a sudden they're very aggressive. They're domineering. They're bold. I always say that 2s get this like naggy voice that like all of a sudden they're like, nobody helps me and I got to do this all by myself. And everyone's over here like, you never asked us for help, because you always are like, don't worry, I'll do it. Don't worry, I'll do it. And all of a sudden the 2s are like, nobody does anything for me. And you're like, okay, that's when you can start to notice that you're like, oh, I'm picking up that 8 energy. 3s go to 9. So this is where they become very disengaged. Usually what happens is because the 3 could literally work themselves to death or to physical injury, because we enjoy work. Like I actually enjoy working. Like if I had to pick between like, oh, let's go play games or something, or like I have, I'm going to build a new business today, I'd be like, building a new business. It makes no logical sense. I just like to point that out. Only another 3
but I
would
just
be like,
want to
yeah,
say I can relate in some ways there.
right? I'm like, I love it. It's my favorite thing to do. So that 3, what happens is they become disengaged and they pull, and all of a sudden they've got 9 traits where I don't want to do anything. I just want to sit back. I don't want to have to be responsible for anything. And they shut off, which is, a 3, because all of a sudden they're like, I'm not answering any messages. Everything is just, nothing matters. So a 4, when they go to stress, they go to a 2, which means usually they're usually really connected to their feelings. They all of a sudden become very clingy. They don't attach to their own emotions because they don't want to process them. And so they become overly involved in other people's emotions and lives. So it's like they pick up other people's drama and they're like, I'll hold this for a minute because it's way better than processing my own feelings. A 5, all of a sudden they feel like they have ADHD. A 5 that's usually on top of things, all of a sudden they're hyperactive, they're scattered, they're all over the place. They just can't like seem to get their feet underneath them, because they go to that 7. I don't know if I said that. And 6s, they go to a 3. So 6s that usually are very loyal, they've got a plan, all the things that are happening, all of a sudden they become very competitive, aggressive, and very self-conscious and self-image aware. So they want to make sure that the world perceives them as having things together. Whereas normally they're like, I don't have it together and I'm going to be honest about it. They're like, no, we've got it all together. Okay. Because apparently 3s are like that. And I was like, I don't have it together, but I can sure fake it. A 7 goes to a 1 in stress, which is 7, easygoing. All of a sudden they become like perfectionists. They become critical of themselves and others, and they want things to look a certain way. So they become very, very frustrated with everything in their lives. An 8, they go to a 5. All of a sudden, an 8 who can make choices and be bold. And all of a sudden, they just want to be alone. They don't want to talk to anybody about their plans, and they have a hard time making decisions. And 9s, usually the easygoing 9, all of a sudden goes to a 6, so they become anxious, worried. They have all the what ifs. Oh my goodness, I need to plan for worst case scenario all the time going in their head instead of their, it's going to be fine. Everything is going to be calm. They all of a sudden are in irrational state. So the best part is, you know this, like, stress can be good for us. Stress is to help us recognize something's wrong. So when you're looking at that stress number, you go, okay, am I sick? Do I need to take care of myself? Is this something I actually need to take care of? Or do I need to pull back to my original number? So looking and utilizing that and starting to recognize those traits when they come.
Yeah. Wow. Asking for a friend. Hi, I'm that friend. What if you feel a little bit of all of those things when you're stressed? Is that normal?
Yeah. And I think that's probably true, because what's going to happen is your number, your base number, you naturally go through to your unhealthy levels before you switch to that stress number. So like us as 3, we go into the, I'm really frustrated and I want everything to be perfect and I need everything to be flowing right. And then all of a sudden it's like we spent too long in our unhealthy place. So we switch. So you're going to recognize your unhealthy traits and then you switch to your the unhealthy number and stress. And usually that's because you didn't get the signals the first time around that you're like, I can tell I'm going there. I can tell I'm going there. Oh, and we're there.
Landed. Okay. Crash landing. Yep. All right. Well, I'm curious, how has this knowledge of the Enneagram helped you personally, or helped clients that you've worked with connect with not only you, but also your family?
Yes. And this is why I love the Enneagram, because I felt like it was so cool to figure out myself, right? We all love to look at the Enneagram and search for our own number. But the truth is, you get the most out of the Enneagram when you figure out the people around you, because you start to recognize that you are not in control of everybody's behavior. Okay. You're not like the center of the universe. I may feel like it sometimes, but I'm not the center of the universe. So recognizing, I remember the moment I figured out my husband's an Enneagram 8. And when I figured out he was an 8, it was like the world, all the pieces came together, because all those things, I'm in the feeling triad, so I feel everything. And my husband's in the gut triad, so he's just like the do person. And I'll sit there, we'll get into an argument about money or finances. And I'm like, we're getting a divorce. It's happening. My husband's over there finances and our marriage, they're two separate things. Why do you keep meshing them together? And I began to realize, I don't have to take it personally. His struggles are not mine to take on. And I think especially as moms and as women, we see our kids, our spouse go through something and we're like, oh, this, I need to feel this for them. I need to process this for them. And once you begin to realize this is their journey, they're allowed to have that. I think that's the most beautiful trait, because I heard a woman this week say, I'm so grateful that I wasn't in charge of picking things for my children. She was probably in her mid 60s, 70s. And she was like, I'm so grateful, because I would have picked this job for my kids and I would have picked this, this spouse, and I would have got it all wrong. And I think so often we forget, each person came as their own person. And as we let them experience those things and just be there for the process and not internally take everything, that's where we really find that true connection piece. And we're able to go, okay, I recognize that you get to process this different than me and your focus is different than mine. And even if, with me and you, we have that same focus, we're still going to do things a little bit different. And you all of a sudden are able to validate someone else, but also just be there and to be, have that empathy that I think, especially in this world, we're missing so much of. That, oh, I can be empathetic because oh, I have empathy for 9s who maybe struggle to have that motivation. Whereas for a 3, motivation comes very natural to us. That is like, oh, okay, like I want to do this. All right, I'm motivated. I thought about doing it. That means it's already done in my head. And so I can have a lot of empathy for a 9 who's like, I just don't, like, I need external motivation. And so, yeah, that's where you can really, truly find that love for each person and love them for who they are.
Yeah. And just save yourself a lot of heartache, a lot of like back and forth in your own head, right? A lot of analysis. I tend to analyze things sometimes a little too much. So I think,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I feel like we need that little like, the more you know, with the rainbow popping up
Yes.
here.
Yes,
All right, Tess.
exactly.
Well, we're going to move on to our lightning round now, where I'm going to ask you some random, just for fun type questions, just so our listeners can get to know you a little bit more on a personal level. Are you ready?
Okay.
All right. What is your guilty pleasure TV show?
I will always go back to Buffy the Vampire Slayer every time.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. What book are you reading right now?
Right now, let's see. I am on Audible listening to Court of Roses, something like that. Court of Throne of Roses, something like that. Sarah J. Maas
Okay.
book. And then I am reading on my Kindle another book about a palace. Yeah. And then Harry Potter with my kids. So I'm currently reading 3 books.
I'm reading Harry Potter with my kids too.
Oh, it's the
Yeah,
best.
we're on book 5. It's taking forever. I think we've been on book 5 for 6 months. It's a long one, but
It's a
yeah,
long
I love it.
They're coming out with the illustrated book 5 this year too.
Ooh, how long is that going to be? I mean, book 5 is already like the size of the Bible.
I don't know. The 4th one was pretty big too. Like we have all of them illustrated, and the 4th one's pretty big. But
Yeah.
the pictures are
Okay.
so worth it.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right. Would you consider yourself more of an introvert or an extrovert?
I would probably say definitely more extroverted.
Okay. Nail salon, hair salon, or spa? You can only pick one place to visit for the rest of your life. Which one is it?
Probably hair salon. I change my hair a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a popular choice here. If they made a
Mm-hmm.
movie about your life, who would you want to play you?
Oh, that's a really good one. What's her name? I was like the one that she was in Pretty Woman.
Oh, Julia Roberts.
Yes, I would have Julia Roberts totally play me.
I could totally see that. Yeah. Awesome.
I love her. She's the best. Plus, she has red hair too. So, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. What's something most people don't know about you?
Oh, I feel like I'm totally an open book. Maybe that if you do not follow me on Instagram, that I am a total, like, I love all the conspiracy theories, like the weird things. I actually started a kids podcast that was just dedicated to like Bigfoot, UFO sightings, all of like the weird things, because they've always fascinated me. And so it fascinates my 7-year-old. So I started a whole kids podcast because I love to have like conversations of like true crime. What do you think happened? And so it's my favorite. I just love me some weird stuff.
Oh my God, that's amazing. My kids would love to listen to that podcast. What's the name of it?
It's called the Mystery Kids Podcast. So it's really fun. I love doing it. I've been doing it for 2 years, and it's brought out the other kid weirdos too, that I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not alone.
Yes. We're all a little bit weird in this world in our own way.
We are. I tell my kids all the time, I was like, weirdo is a term of endearment because
For sure.
we're all weird.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Well, this has been so much fun. Can you let our listeners know where they can find you?
Yeah, so I am on Instagram the most. I'm the Enneagram Mom. There's dots in between the words, but usually you can find me on there. So yeah, that's where I am for most of my Enneagram stuff. And then honestly, you can find me through anything else on Instagram. So that's where I'm the most active.
Awesome. Yeah. And we'll put that link in the show notes as well. Tess, thank you so much for being here. This was such a great episode. I know I learned a ton, and I'm sure our listeners did too.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
You've been listening to the Mama Work It podcast. I hope you've enjoyed this episode and would love if you could take a quick minute to leave me a review on whichever platform you're listening from, and maybe even send a note to a fellow mama friend recommending it. Reviews and recs help this podcast grow and reach more like-minded, awesome moms. And if you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click that button so we can stay in touch, girl. By the way, if you haven't checked out the Mama Work It website, please do. There are lots of free resources and great articles there that can help you with the juggle of work life, mom life, wife life, fill in the blank life. So head on over. Thanks again for being part of the tribe. I'll see you soon, but in the meantime, keep on working it, mama.